Most people do not fail because they lack talent, opportunity, or resources. They fail because they think too small for too long. They negotiate with their potential. They settle into comfort and call it patience. But life does not respond to small requests, and time does not wait for hesitant decisions. You see, progress begins the moment your mind outgrows your current situation. When you start thinking bigger, you stop asking, "Can I?" and start asking, "Why not now?" Bigger thinking stretches your expectations. It raises the standard of what you believe is possible. And once that standard rises, something else must change: your speed. Because ideas without action are harmless. Dreams without urgency stay exactly where they are. The world does not move in favor of intention. It moves in favor of execution. When you decide to move faster, you are not rushing. You are respecting time. You are acknowledging that delay has a cost, and that cost is your future. Every day you wait to act on what you already know. Life quietly charges you interest. The longer you hesitate, the heavier the price becomes. But the moment you think bigger and move faster, momentum steps in, confidence grows, energy multiplies, and suddenly, what once felt intimidating begins to feel inevitable. This is not about pressure. This is about purpose. This is about realizing that your life expands in direct proportion to the courage of your decisions and the speed at which you make them. Vision always comes before velocity, whether people recognize it or not. Long before movement shows up in visible action, it begins quietly in the mind as an expanded idea of what is possible. A person can only move as fast as the boundaries they have accepted internally. If those boundaries are small, movement will be cautious, delayed, and inconsistent. If those boundaries are large, movement becomes decisive, confident, and sustained. This is why thinking bigger is not motivational fluff. It is a practical prerequisite for speed. No one accelerates toward a destination they cannot clearly see or believe in. Most people attempt to increase speed without upgrading vision. They try to work harder, wake up earlier, push longer hours, and force momentum, yet they feel stuck. The reason is simple: the mind is still operating on an old map. When your mental picture of life remains modest, your behavior will unconsciously slow down to match it. You will procrastinate, second guess, overanalyze, and wait for reassurance, not because you are lazy, but because your internal vision does not demand urgency. Speed is a response to clarity. When the destination is compelling, movement becomes natural. A bigger vision reorganizes priorities automatically. When someone truly sees a larger future for themselves, distractions lose their power. Trivial activities feel expensive. Comfort begins to look dangerous. The mind starts filtering decisions through a different question. Not, why is this easy? But, does this move me closer to what I see? That shift alone accelerates behavior. People who think do not need constant motivation, their vision pulls them forward. They move faster because slowing down feels like betrayal of what they know is possible. Small thinking produces hesitation. Hesitation produces delay. Delay produces regret. This sequence is predictable and repeatable. When the mind is trained to expect modest outcomes, it tries to protect itself from risk, embarrassment, or failure. That protection shows up as over-preparation and endless planning. But when vision expands, fear shrinks, not because fear disappears, but because it is outweighed by purpose. A person with a compelling vision is willing to tolerate discomfort, uncertainty, and criticism because the future they see is larger than the pain of moving toward it. Vision is not wishful thinking. It is a disciplined act of imagination combined with belief. It is deciding deliberately that life can be larger, richer, more meaningful, and more demanding than it currently is. Once that decision is made, speed becomes logical. You stop waiting for perfect conditions because your vision tells you that time is valuable. You stop negotiating with yourself because you know where you are going. You stop explaining your delay because progress matters more than approval. The size of your vision determines how you interpret time. When vision is small, time feels abundant. Tomorrow seems guaranteed. Next year feels far away. When vision is big, time becomes precious. You become aware that opportunities have seasons and momentum has windows. This awareness creates velocity. You do not move faster because someone tells you to hurry. You move faster because you understand the cost of waiting. Vision converts time from something you spend casually into something you invest intentionally. Many people believe speed comes from external pressure, deadlines, or competition. In reality, sustainable speed comes from internal alignment. When vision and values are aligned, action becomes smooth and continuous. You no longer start and stop. You no longer surge and collapse. You develop rhythm. That rhythm is what creates long-term momentum. Without vision, speed burns people out. With vision, speed energizes them. They wake up with direction. They move through the day with purpose. They end the day knowing why the effort mattered. Vision also determines the quality of decisions made under pressure. When thinking is small, pressure causes panic. Panic causes poor choices. When thinking is big, pressure sharpens focus. Big thinkers ask better questions. Instead of asking how to avoid mistakes, they ask how to make progress. Instead of asking what could go wrong, they ask what must go right. These questions shorten decision time. They eliminate unnecessary complexity. They allow movement even when conditions are imperfect. A larger vision forces growth in identity. You cannot think bigger and remain the same person. The moment your vision expands, your standards must rise to match it. Standards dictate behavior. Higher standards reduce tolerance for delay, excuses, and half effort. This is why people who think big appear disciplined and decisive. They are not driven by willpower alone. They are driven by alignment between who they believe they must become and where they believe they must go. Speed is simply the outward expression of that alignment. Vision also reframes failure. When thinking is small, failure feels final. It feels personal. It feels like proof of inadequacy. When thinking is big, failure feels instructional. It becomes data, not a verdict. This reframing removes paralysis. People move faster because they are no longer afraid of learning through action. They understand that progress is built through correction, not perfection. A big vision gives permission to move before everything is figured out. The absence of vision creates overdependence on motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It fluctuates with mood, energy, and circumstances. Vision, on the other hand, is stable. It becomes a reference point. On difficult days, vision reminds you why speed still matters. On successful days, vision prevents complacency. This consistency is what allows sustained forward motion. People with vision keep moving when others pause to celebrate or retreat to recover. Thinking bigger also expands responsibility. A person with a large vision recognizes that their actions affect more than just themselves. They begin to see their influence, their example, their potential contribution. Responsibility accelerates behavior. When you know others may depend on the outcome of your growth, delay becomes unacceptable. Speed becomes an ethical choice, not a selfish one. You move faster because staying small would cost more than just your own comfort. Vision sharpens focus by eliminating false options. Many people move slowly because they are trying to keep too many doors open. They are afraid to commit. Big vision closes doors intentionally. It says no to good opportunities so it can say yes to the right one. This decisiveness reduces friction. Energy stops leaking. Movement becomes clean and direct. Speed increases not because effort increases, but because resistance decreases. When vision precedes velocity, speed feels natural rather than forced. You do not need to announce your intentions or prove your ambition. Your behavior speaks for you. You act sooner. You follow up faster. You learn quicker. You recover rapidly from setbacks. All of this happens because your mind has already accepted a larger reality as possible and necessary. Ultimately, the ceiling on your speed is the ceiling on your belief. You will never consistently outpace your own expectations. This is why upgrading vision must come before upgrading habits. Habits are tools. Vision is direction. Tools without direction create motion without progress. Direction without tools creates intention without results. But when vision expands first, the right habits emerge naturally, and speed becomes a byproduct of clarity, commitment, and conviction that life can be more, that you are capable of more. And that waiting no longer aligns with what you now see as possible and necessary for the future you have decided to pursue. Small thinking is rarely dramatic. It does not announce itself loudly or demand attention. Instead, it settles quietly into the background of daily life, shaping decisions, expectations, and behavior without being questioned. It feels reasonable, responsible, even safe. Yet this is precisely what makes it dangerous. Small thinking does not destroy ambition overnight. It slowly reduces it until slow living becomes normal and limitation feels justified. Long before results become disappointing, the mind has already agreed to operate within narrow boundaries. Small thinking begins with the stories people tell themselves about what is realistic. They say they are being practical, but practicality often disguises fear. They lower their expectations to avoid disappointment. They reduce their goals to avoid criticism. Over time, this pattern trains the mind to associate ambition with risk and safety with staying small. Once that association is formed, action slows down. Decisions take longer. Opportunities are examined to death instead of acted upon. Life becomes cautious rather than courageous. When thinking is small, time is misused. There is a belief that there is plenty of time later to change, improve, or begin. This illusion of abundance creates delay. Days are filled with activity, but little progress. People stay busy but not effective. They confuse movement with momentum and comfort with stability. Because nothing urgent is demanded by their vision, there is no pressure to move decisively. The result is a slow life that looks calm on the surface, but feels empty underneath. Small thinking also lowers tolerance for discomfort. Growth always demands strain, learning, and uncertainty. But when expectations are limited, discomfort feels unnecessary. People ask themselves why they should push harder when what they have seems sufficient. This mindset quietly erodes potential. Challenges are avoided instead of embraced. New responsibilities are declined instead of pursued. The mind chooses familiarity over progress, and speed is sacrificed in exchange for short-term ease. One of the most damaging effects of small thinking is the way it shapes identity. People begin to see themselves as someone who is not that type of person. Not bold, not fast-moving, not ambitious. These labels become self-fulfilling. Once identity shrinks, behavior follows. You do not rush toward goals you no longer believe are meant for you. You do not act urgently on opportunities you believe belong to someone else. Life slows because the self-image has been reduced. Small thinking also affects how people interpret failure. Instead of seeing mistakes as part of growth, they see them as proof that they should not aim higher. A single setback becomes justification for lowering standards. Instead of adjusting strategy, they adjust ambition. This pattern conditions the mind to retreat whenever resistance appears. Over time, forward motion becomes hesitant and fragile. People move only when conditions feel safe, which means they move rarely and slowly. Another hidden cost of small thinking is overdependence on permission. People wait for approval from family, peers, circumstances, or confidence before acting. They believe they need more validation, more information, or more certainty. In reality, they need a larger internal permission to grow. Small thinking externalizes authority. It says, I will move when it feels right. Bigger thinking internalizes authority. It says, I move because it is necessary. Without that internal authority, life remains reactive and slow. Small thinking also shrinks responsibility. When people believe their actions have limited impact, they behave accordingly. They show up halfway. They delay decisions. They accept mediocrity because they believe it does not matter much. But responsibility is a powerful accelerator. When people recognize that their growth affects their family, their work, their future, and their example, speed increases naturally. Small thinking robs people of this awareness, keeping them in a narrow, self-contained loop. Slow living is often romanticized as balance or simplicity, but there is a difference between intentional simplicity and unconscious limitation. Small thinking disguises stagnation as contentment. People say they are satisfied, but deep down they feel restless. That restlessness is the signal that potential is being ignored. When ignored for too long, it turns into frustration, envy, or regret. Life feels heavy not because it is demanding, but because it is underutilized. Small thinking trains people to negotiate with discipline. They promise themselves they will act later, start next week, or commit when things calm down. These negotiations feel harmless, but they compound. Each delay reinforces the habit of postponement. Over time, urgency weakens, speed becomes uncomfortable. People feel rushed even when nothing meaningful is happening. Their internal pace slows to match their lowered expectations. Another consequence of small thinking is narrow perception of opportunity. People see fewer options because they are not looking for expansion. They overlook possibilities that require learning, courage, or adaptation. They dismiss opportunities that do not come with guarantees. This selective blindness reduces movement. Life does not present fewer chances. The mind simply filters them out. When opportunity is not recognized, action cannot follow. Small thinking also keeps people trapped in comparison. Instead of measuring progress against their own potential, they measure it against the comfort level of others. If everyone around them is moving slowly, they feel justified in doing the same. This creates a culture of stagnation. Speed feels unnecessary because mediocrity is normalized. Progress becomes optional rather than essential. The slow erosion caused by small thinking rarely triggers a crisis. That is why it persists. There is no single moment where everything falls apart. Instead, years pass quietly. Goals are postponed. Talents remain underdeveloped. Energy fades. Then one day, people look back and realize they have been busy surviving instead of intentionally building. The pain of that realization is heavier than the effort they once avoided. Breaking free from small thinking requires honesty. It requires admitting that limitation often comes from internal agreement, not external circumstance. The moment someone challenges their assumptions about what is possible, speed begins to return. They start acting sooner. They stop waiting for ideal conditions. They accept that growth will feel uncomfortable and imperfect. This shift does not happen because life becomes easier, but because staying small becomes unacceptable. Small thinking slows life because it removes the reason to move quickly. When there is no compelling vision, no demanding standard, and no sense of responsibility, urgency disappears. Days blend together. Progress becomes optional. But life does not pause in response to small expectations. Time continues forward. Opportunities expire. Energy changes. The cost of small thinking is not immediate failure, but delayed regret. When people finally confront the reality of how small thinking has shaped their pace, the realization can be sobering. They see that life was not holding them back as much as their own cautious mindset was holding them still. Speed returns the moment thinking expands. Not reckless speed, but intentional, purposeful movement driven by a renewed belief that life is meant to be engaged fully, pursued actively, and lived at a pace that reflects respect for time, potential, and the quiet truth that playing small has always been the slowest way to live. Urgency is often misunderstood because people confuse it with pressure, anxiety, or chaos. They picture urgency as rushing, cutting corners, or living in a constant state of stress. But true urgency is none of those things. Urgency is a disciplined awareness of time, priority, and consequence. It is calm, deliberate, and purposeful. It does not come from panic. It comes from clarity. When urgency is rooted in discipline rather than fear, it becomes one of the most powerful forces for progress a person can develop. Pressure comes from the outside. It is imposed by circumstances, deadlines, expectations, or consequences that arrive when preparation has been delayed. Discipline, on the other hand, comes from within. It is chosen in advance. Urgency as a discipline means deciding ahead of time that certain actions matter enough to be done promptly, consistently, and without emotional negotiation. It means respecting time before time forces respect upon you. People who live with disciplined urgency are rarely frantic because they are rarely behind. Most people experience urgency only when options are running out. They wait until money is tight, health is declining, opportunities are closing, or consequences are unavoidable. At that point, urgency feels heavy and stressful because it is reactive. It is driven by fear of loss rather than desire for growth. Disciplined urgency is proactive. It moves early not because disaster is imminent, but because potential is valuable. It acts when things are stable, which is why it feels controlled rather than overwhelming. When urgency is treated as a discipline, it becomes part of character. Just as some people are known for being punctual, prepared, or reliable, disciplined urgency becomes a trait. These individuals respond quickly, follow up promptly, and act decisively, not because they are impulsive, but because they have trained themselves to honor momentum. They understand that delay is rarely neutral. Delay usually costs clarity, energy, or opportunity, even when it feels harmless in the moment. One of the reasons people resist urgency is because it exposes priorities. If something truly matters, urgency demands action. That can be uncomfortable because it removes excuses. Discipline forces honesty. It asks, if this goal is important, why is it being postponed? If this relationship matters, why is the conversation being delayed? If growth is desired, why is effort inconsistent? Urgency does not allow self-deception to last very long. Urgency as a discipline also simplifies life. When people move with intention, fewer things pile up. Tasks are handled before they become problems. Decisions are made before confusion sets in. This creates mental space. Many people feel overwhelmed not because they have too much to do, but because they have waited too long to do what already needed attention. Disciplined urgency clears the backlog of avoided actions, which restores focus and confidence. Another critical distinction is that urgency does not mean doing everything at once. It means doing the right things at the right time without unnecessary delay. Pressure says everything is urgent. Discipline says what matters most is urgent. This selectivity is what makes urgency sustainable. People burn out when they treat every demand as equally important. Disciplined urgency filters noise and directs energy toward actions that create long-term value. Urgency also strengthens self-trust. Every time a person acts promptly on a commitment, they reinforce the belief that they can rely on themselves. This trust compounds. Confidence grows not from thinking positive thoughts, but from keeping promises to oneself. When urgency is habitual, follow-through becomes normal. Over time, this reduces internal resistance. There is less debate, less procrastination, and less emotional friction before action. Many people believe they need more motivation to move faster when what they actually need is stronger standards. Motivation fluctuates. Discipline endures. Urgency rooted in discipline does not ask how one feels before acting. It asks what the situation requires. Feelings are acknowledged, but they are not given authority. This separation between emotion and execution is what allows disciplined urgency to function even on difficult days. Urgency also protects opportunity. Opportunities rarely announce how long they will remain available. They appear quietly and disappear just as quietly. People who move slowly often assume there will be another chance later. Sometimes there is. Often there is not. Disciplined urgency recognizes that timing matters. It does not rush blindly, but it also does not assume unlimited chances. It understands that readiness combined with prompt action is what turns opportunity into outcome. When urgency becomes a discipline, learning accelerates. People who act quickly get feedback faster. They adjust sooner. They gain experience while others are still preparing. This creates a widening gap over time. The disciplined individual is not necessarily smarter or more talented. They are simply earlier. They start sooner, correct sooner, and improve sooner. Speed of learning becomes a competitive advantage, achieved not through stress, but through decisive action. Urgency also reframes effort. Work done with urgency feels lighter because it is purposeful. Work done under pressure feels heavy because it is reactive. The same task can feel completely different depending on whether it is chosen early or forced late. Discipline allows people to work from intention rather than obligation. This distinction is subtle but powerful. It determines whether effort drains energy or builds momentum. Another overlooked aspect of urgency is respect. Acting promptly communicates respect for others' time, for commitments, and for one's own goals. It builds credibility. People trust those who move when they say they will. This trust opens doors. It creates influence. It attracts opportunity. Disciplined urgency, therefore, is not only a personal asset, it is a social one. Urgency as a discipline also creates emotional stability. When important things are handled promptly, anxiety decreases. Much of what people label as stress is actually the subconscious awareness of unfinished business. When actions are delayed, the mind keeps reminders active. When actions are taken, the mind can rest. Urgency clears mental clutter by closing loops. This clarity improves decision-making and emotional resilience. It is important to recognize that urgency does not eliminate rest or reflection. Discipline includes knowing when to pause deliberately rather than drift unconsciously. Rest chosen intentionally supports urgency. Drift undermines it. Disciplined urgency ensures that rest is recovery, not avoidance. It allows pauses without losing momentum because direction has already been established. People who master urgency do not live faster lives in a frantic sense. They live fuller lives in a focused sense. They experience more progress, more learning, and more satisfaction because they are consistently aligned with what matters. They do not wait for life to demand urgency through crisis. They choose urgency in advance through discipline. The shift from pressure to discipline changes everything. Pressure exhausts. Discipline empowers. Pressure reacts. Discipline leads. Pressure waits until consequences are visible. Discipline acts while options are still wide. When urgency is embraced as a discipline, it stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like freedom. The freedom that comes from knowing you are actively shaping your future rather than being dragged toward it by circumstance and time. Growth is never neutral, and it is never comfortable. The moment a person decides to expand beyond their current level, discomfort becomes unavoidable. Comfort belongs to familiarity, and familiarity belongs to the past. Growth belongs to the future, and the future always requires leaving something behind. This is why expansion demands discomfort, not as a punishment, but as proof that movement is happening. If nothing feels awkward, challenging, or stretching, then nothing meaningful is changing. Most people associate discomfort with danger, failure, or instability, so they instinctively resist it. Yet discomfort is simply the signal that capacity is being tested. Muscles grow by being strained. Skills develop by being challenged. Character is formed by being pressured. The absence of discomfort may feel pleasant in the short term, but it guarantees stagnation over time. Life does not reward those who remain comfortable. It rewards those who are willing to endure temporary unease for long-term gain. Leaving familiar ground is difficult because familiarity provides psychological safety. Even when circumstances are unsatisfying, they are predictable. Predictability creates a false sense of control. People know what to expect, how to cope, and how to explain their situation. Growth removes that certainty. It introduces unknowns. It exposes gaps in knowledge and skill. That exposure feels threatening to the ego, which prefers competence over learning. Yet learning is the only path to expansion. Discomfort often shows up first as doubt. A person begins to question whether they are capable, qualified, or deserving. These questions are not signs of inadequacy. They are signs that the current identity is being challenged. Growth requires an identity upgrade, and the transition period is uncomfortable because the old self no longer fits and the new self is not yet fully formed. Listen. Between space is where many people retreat, not because they cannot grow, but because they misinterpret discomfort as a warning instead of a requirement. Expansion also demands discomfort in relationships. When a person grows, dynamics change. Some people feel inspired, others feel threatened, and some feel left behind. Staying comfortable often means staying aligned with the expectations of others, even when those expectations are limiting. Growth requires the courage to tolerate misunderstanding, criticism, or distance. This social discomfort is often more challenging than physical or mental strain, yet it is unavoidable for anyone who chooses to move beyond familiar ground. Discomfort is also tied to responsibility. As capacity grows, expectations rise. Bigger thinking demands better habits, stronger discipline, and higher standards. These changes are uncomfortable because they remove excuses. They require consistency instead of intensity. They demand accountability rather than intention. Comfort allows flexibility. Growth demands structure. Many people prefer the freedom of low expectations, even though it costs them progress. Another reason discomfort is resisted is because it reveals effort. Staying comfortable allows people to appear capable without being challenged. Growth exposes effort publicly. It shows struggle. It includes mistakes and corrections. This visibility can feel embarrassing. Yet effort is the price of mastery. Those who avoid discomfort often protect their image at the expense of their future. Those who accept discomfort understand that temporary awkwardness is a small price to pay for long-term competence. Leaving familiar ground also disrupts routines. Routines are efficient, but they can become prisons if they are not periodically challenged. Growth requires new routines, new skills, and new ways of thinking. This transition phase is messy. Productivity may dip before it rises. Confidence may waver before it strengthens. People who expect growth to feel smooth often abandon it prematurely. Those who understand that discomfort is part of the process stay long enough to see results. Discomfort forces learning. When everything is familiar, learning slows. The brain conserves energy by repeating known patterns. Discomfort signals novelty, which activates attention and adaptation. This is why growth accelerates when people are slightly overwhelmed, not crushed, but stretched. The right amount of discomfort sharpens focus and increases engagement. It pushes people to ask better questions, seek better guidance, and develop better systems. There is also a moral dimension to discomfort in growth. Potential unused is responsibility unmet. When people recognize that they could contribute more, lead better, or build greater value, staying comfortable becomes ethically questionable. Growth is not only about personal gain, it is about fulfilling capacity. Discomfort becomes the cost of honoring that responsibility. Avoiding it may feel easier, but it carries a long-term cost of regret. Many people confuse discomfort with instability. In reality, controlled discomfort creates stability over time. Learning new skills, increasing capacity, and expanding perspective make people more adaptable. Comfort makes people fragile. When circumstances change, those who avoided discomfort struggle, while those who embraced it adjust quickly. Growth discomfort is like training for uncertainty. It prepares people for a world that will change regardless of their preferences. Discomfort also clarifies values. When things are easy, values remain theoretical. When things are uncomfortable, priorities are revealed. People discover what truly matters when effort is required. This clarity strengthens decision-making. It reduces hesitation. It builds conviction. Conviction, once formed, reduces future discomfort because actions become aligned with belief. The initial discomfort is the entry fee to a more coherent life. Leaving familiar ground does not mean abandoning everything at once. It means intentionally stepping beyond current limits. It means choosing challenges that stretch capacity without breaking it. Growth discomfort is progressive. Each level prepares the individual for the next. Those who accept this progression develop confidence in their ability to adapt. Discomfort becomes familiar, even welcome, because it signals progress. One of the greatest illusions is that comfort equals happiness. Comfort without growth leads to restlessness. The mind craves expansion. The human spirit is designed to improve, build, and contribute. When growth is denied, discomfort does not disappear. It simply changes form. It becomes boredom, dissatisfaction, or quiet frustration. Choosing growth discomfort replaces passive unease with purposeful challenge. The willingness to endure discomfort also builds self-respect. Each time a person chooses growth over ease, they reinforce the belief that they are capable of more. This self-respect compounds. It strengthens resilience. It reduces fear of future challenges. Over time, what once felt uncomfortable becomes normal, and new levels of growth demand new forms of discomfort. This cycle is not a flaw in life. It is the mechanism of progress. Discomfort is the toll paid at the border between who you are and who you could become. Those who refuse to pay remain where they are. Those who pay reluctantly move slowly. Those who pay willingly move faster and farther. Growth demands discomfort not because life is cruel, but because expansion requires pressure. Familiar ground is safe, but it is limited. Leaving it is unsettling, but it is the only way to discover what lies beyond what is known, what is easy, and what is currently comfortable. Time does not respond to intention, emotion, or potential. It responds only to action. Every day presents the same number of hours to everyone. but the results those hours produce vary dramatically based on decisiveness. Decisive thinkers do not necessarily have more information, more confidence, or more certainty than others. What separates them is their willingness to choose a direction and move, even when conditions are imperfect. Time rewards this willingness because movement creates momentum, and momentum multiplies effort. Indecision is often disguised as intelligence. People believe that by waiting, analyzing, and gathering more input, they are being responsible. In reality, prolonged hesitation usually signals fear of making the wrong choice rather than commitment to making progress. Time does not compensate for caution. It simply moves on. While one person is still evaluating options, another has already acted, learned, adjusted, and advanced. The difference in outcomes compounds quietly over months and years. Decisive thinkers understand that most decisions are not permanent. They are adjustable. They can be refined, corrected, or redirected once movement begins. Waiting for certainty before acting is a misunderstanding of how progress works. Clarity often follows action, not the other way around. By deciding and moving, individuals gain real, world feedback that no amount of planning can provide. Time rewards this feedback loop by accelerating learning and improvement. Momentum is one of the most underappreciated advantages in life. Once movement begins, each action makes the next one easier. Confidence grows. Skills sharpen. Opportunities appear that were previously invisible. This momentum creates a sense of flow that hesitant individuals rarely experience. Time amplifies momentum because consistent action builds upon itself. Decisive thinkers do not start over repeatedly. They continue from where they left off. Time also favors decisiveness because it reduces cognitive load. When decisions linger, they occupy mental space. They drain energy through constant reconsideration. Decisive thinkers close loops quickly. They free their minds to focus on execution rather than debate. This mental clarity allows them to operate at a higher level of effectiveness. Over time, the cumulative effect of reduced mental friction leads to greater productivity and resilience. Another reason time rewards decisiveness is that it signals commitment. When someone acts decisively, they communicate seriousness to others. Opportunities often come through people, not circumstances. Investors, employers, partners, and collaborators respond to clarity and movement. They are drawn to those who know where they are going and are willing to take steps toward it. Indecision, on the other hand, creates doubt. Time does not bring opportunities to those who hesitate. It brings them to those who move. Decisive thinkers also recover faster from mistakes. Because they act early, they encounter errors sooner when the cost of correction is lower. Hesitant individuals encounter errors later when consequences are heavier and options are fewer. Time rewards those who are willing to make small mistakes early rather than large mistakes late. This willingness accelerates growth and reduces long-term risk. Decisiveness also strengthens personal identity. Each decision reinforces the belief that one is capable of choosing and acting. This self-trust compounds. Over time, decisive thinkers become less reliant on external validation. They do not need constant reassurance because their history of action has proven their adaptability. This independence further accelerates decision-making, creating a positive feedback loop that time amplifies. Many people underestimate the cost of missed momentum. When action is delayed, energy dissipates. Ideas lose freshness. Circumstances change. What once felt exciting begins to feel distant. Decisive thinkers capitalize on initial energy. They act while motivation is high and clarity is fresh. Time rewards this by preserving enthusiasm and converting it into tangible progress. Decisiveness also sharpens intuition. Each decision provides data. Over time, patterns emerge. Decisive thinkers learn to recognize signals faster because they have more experience. Hesitant individuals remain inexperienced because they avoid making choices. Time rewards experience, not intention. Those who decide gain insights simply by being in motion. Another important aspect is that decisiveness reduces regret. Regret is rarely about making the wrong choice. It is about not choosing at all. People look back and wish they had tried, explored, or acted sooner. Decisive thinkers may experience disappointment, but they rarely experience lingering regret because they know they engaged with life actively. Time does not erase regret, it amplifies it. Decisiveness prevents it by turning possibilities into experiences. Decisive action also builds resilience. Each choice, whether successful or not, strengthens problem-solving ability. People who decide often become comfortable with uncertainty. They trust their capacity to adapt. This comfort reduces fear, which further accelerates decision-making. Time rewards this resilience by placing such individuals in increasingly complex and influential situations. Time also favors decisiveness because it aligns with reality. Reality is dynamic. Conditions change regardless of preparation. Decisive thinkers accept this and move with the flow of change. Hesitant individuals wait for stability that never fully arrives. By the time they feel ready, the environment has shifted again. Time rewards those who move with change, not those who wait for it to stop. Decisiveness does not mean recklessness. It means informed commitment. Decisive thinkers gather enough information to act, not all possible information. They understand the diminishing returns of overanalysis. Beyond a certain point, more information delays action without improving outcomes. Time rewards those who recognize this threshold and move. There is also a compounding effect of decisive habits. Small decisions made promptly accumulate into significant progress. Choosing to start a project, make a call, have a conversation, or invest in learning may seem minor, but over time, these choices shape trajectories. Time magnifies small advantages. Decisive thinkers benefit from this compounding because they consistently take the first step. Indecision creates a hidden tax on life. It drains energy, increases anxiety, and erodes confidence. Decisiveness eliminates this tax. It replaces tension with direction. Time rewards this clarity by allowing focus to deepen and effort to concentrate. Ultimately, time rewards decisive thinkers because decisiveness aligns with the fundamental nature of progress. Progress requires movement. Movement requires choice. Choice requires courage. Those who choose to act signal to time that they are ready to engage with reality as it is, not as they wish it to be. Time responds by offering feedback, opportunity, and growth to those who step forward and claim their share of experience rather than waiting for certainty to arrive. Knowing that life advances whether one decides to participate actively or remain on the sidelines watching moments pass that will never return